Hi everyone, I'm Alicia Fiorletta, Content Strategist for Channel Marketer Report, and I have joining me today for this episode of Channel Chat, Daniel Hawtof of Blackhawk Engagement Solutions. Dan, thanks so much for taking the time.
Oh, happy to. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Dan. Well, today I wanted to talk with you about incentive programs because, as you know, a key challenge for many vendors is driving partner engagement and loyalty. And obviously, incentive programs are a really big part of driving that engagement. So, to start off our conversation, I want to get your thoughts. Why do you think it's so challenging for vendors to ensure that their partners are loyal and want to keep doing business with them?
Well, let's start with the kind of obvious. Channel partners are not your employees. They work for someone else. They have other agendas and strategies and goals in life, and vendors are coming in trying to influence them. It's hard enough sometimes to influence your own employees, but very tough at a distance when you don't know them personally, and there can be lots of them. So it can be very tough to influence someone who doesn't work for you. Also, there are lots of programs being run at the same time. So there are many vendors typically running lots of programs, a variety of communications coming in. In fact, some of the sales reps are often inundated with hundreds of emails from their vendors asking them to do certain things and change their behavior. Many are not communicated. Some are very difficult to understand or engage in. And oftentimes they're really not well conceived. They're really short-term asks and not part of a longer-term strategy.
Got it. So, looking at incentive programs overall, where do you think the channel stands in terms of effectiveness and the design of these programs?
So these channel programs have been around a long time, and most of them focus really just on sales. They're either spiffs, which just are trying to motivate an individual to sell something next quarter, or they are what we call a headquarter rebate, where the vendor is giving the partner some percentage of their sales for it back in a rebate, and those have lost favor. They're really not very effective anymore. Spiffs tend to be just short term. I've often seen where a spiff will be run, sales will go up. The next month or quarter, when the spiff ends, sales go down to a level low enough that sometimes maybe you shouldn't have run the thing in the first place. And then headquarter rebates are just often a check that goes into the partner's account that they just figure is business as usual and don't change their behavior in any way or change their strategy based on getting that check. They just expect it every month. So if you, those are really the problems in incentive programs and why they have kind of stopped working very effectively.
Got it. So, with that in mind, what are some tips or best practices you can share in terms of not only designing these incentive programs, but constantly revisiting and refining them?
Well, I think you have to start with what are the key behaviors that drive success for each vendor, and those are very different. If you're a more commodity-oriented vendor or your sales cycle is 6 months to a year, you have to figure out what the key activities are, the key behaviors you need from a partner in order to really drive success in the long term. There are a couple ways to figure that out. One way is to do some analysis on the activities that you know about. So these activities include things like training and lead follow-up, business planning, lots of activities like that. And do those really drive success in the end? And oftentimes you can find, if you look at your best partners and see what they're doing. So they have high lead follow-up, or it doesn't really matter. The leads aren't connected to success. So you have to look at what those key behaviors are, do demos or samples or some other activity, certification. Is that really the core to success? And usually it's a combination of these things. So looking at the whole life cycle of a sale, the behaviors that are key to drive that life cycle from pre-sales activity to post-sales activity. Look at all that stuff and figure out the few things that really matter and focus your entire program on that. Beyond that, there are some other best practices we recommend. One is not all partners are the same. So you need to segment them and offer them different incentives based on who they are. So there are distributors and resellers. There are new partners and long-term partners. There are high-volume, highly engaged partners, and then there are those who are not very engaged. And you need to change your programs in order to drive the activities that you want. We recommend piloting programs, not trying to just think of something, invest heavily in it, and see what happens. Try it. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. If it gives you the result you're looking for, roll it out in a broader way. Communication is key. Seeing lots of companies that have a great program but don't effectively communicate it, create some excitement and engagement and real interest in it. And without that communication, nobody really even knows it's out there, and you get pretty poor results. Couple other things, you have to keep it simple. So vendors always want to collect lots of information, get great understanding in every deal, make sure that somebody is doing exactly what they want before they pay. And if you do that, oftentimes you don't get very good participation. So you have to keep it simple. Know that occasionally you're going to, do something that isn't perfect, but making it easy on the 90-95% who are participating and doing what you want, that's what you need, because otherwise it's just too darn tough to do. And then keep it fresh. So graphics, videos, gamification with games, make it look cool, make it fun, do something interesting. Don't just roll out the same old, same old. Try to do something, and this is where marketing can really help you create something fun and interesting connected to other activities. So those are, at least top of mind, some of the key best practices that we see make these engagements really work.
Wow, Dan, those are some really great tips and best practices, especially when you think about it. Channel players, they're managing multiple relationships, right? And they're part of multiple programs. So I could imagine for the vendors, it's becoming increasingly important to differentiate and really create a great experience for them.
Exactly, and each vendor is different. Some are the leading vendor, some are trying to break in and get mind share. Especially for those that don't already have a great track record, you have to do something fun and interesting, and different, and just to get people's attention. It's like advertising or any other kind of marketing. You really got to make it fun and engaging and different so that people remember what you're up to.
That's a great point, Dan. And it seems like being fun and compelling is becoming more important than ever. So, to the end, I know Blackhawk Engagement Solutions talks about this concept of incentive engineering. So, can you walk through that process with me and hone in on why this is kind of turning the traditional incentive program design concept or overall incentive program concept on its head?
Well, the key focus for incentive engineering is really focusing on those behaviors we've been talking about, not just sales. So by looking at all and understanding the behaviors that matter, looking at the program options that you have, and those options include things like individual incentives, where you're trying to motivate a single person to do something, what we would call a headquarter rebate, where you're giving money to the company, and in that case you're trying to change the strategy and direction of that particular partner and the executives and management in that partner, because you're hitting their bottom line. And then also promotional activities like MDF and co-op. So you have, let's say those are your three high-level tools, and you look at the pre-sales and post-sales behaviors, and then you combine those with the kind of rewards that actually motivate people, and you design a long-term program that connects those dots. Now, this sounds like it can be daunting, and we don't recommend trying to do everything all at once. Mm-hmm. You can start simple with a kind of life cycle approach. How do we engage them? How do we start getting them trained? How do we get them demoing and sampling and doing those activities? Then we get them selling bundles of products, not just single products. Then we move them into renewals and trying to upsell them. You can add these things over time, and some of that is what makes the program interesting. So that's really the incentive engineering that we're talking about in the white papers and things that we publish.
Oh, that's very interesting. So once a program is designed and implemented, how can organizations go about measuring the impact or the overall success of their incentive program?
There's obviously lots of data that you get in these programs, and we have analytics that show all kinds of things. But two major areas that I think you really want to focus on. One, and everybody talks about ROI, return on investment. It's really easy to understand the investment. We all know how much we're spending on these incentive programs, but what are we getting back? One of the best ways to do this is when there's lots of partners, to look at an incentive program and the effect that it's having on those who are participating in the program and those that are not. Did we get anything incremental out of that investment? That investment is, as best you can figure, the return. So if a set of group A partners is growing by 12%, and this set B, who's not participating in the program, is growing by 6%, the 6% difference is your return, and you know what your incentive investment is. So that's kind of the ROI view. We also recommend looking at users and trying to figure out who is doing well and why. And we measure them on frequency, recency, and monetary value. So how frequently are they engaging in your programs? Are they logging in? Are they emailing? All of the different measurements that you might have for frequency. Recency is when was the last time they engaged with you? So somebody who engages often but only once a year, there's something to change there. And you can drive and create incentives and engagement methods to change that.
Got it.
So the last piece of this is monetary value. How much is an individual user worth? What do you get from each of them from a sales perspective? And you can measure this through these incentive programs because they're claiming, and you understand you can attach an individual salesperson to their sales through these platforms. So what are they worth? How engaged are they? And then you create programs to change that, either drive more sales, drive more frequency, or drive more recency. Try to get them to come in more often. So that's the kind of user view, and that goes very nicely with the incentive ROI view. Together, those two things are at least two of the top areas to measure whether your incentive engineering is really working.
Great. Well, Dan, I think provided a lot of really great tips and best practices, and of course shared a lot of great insights into how vendors can really ramp up their incentive programs. So thank you again so much for taking the time out to chat with us today, and thanks everyone out there for watching.